4-03, but you do need to know numbers. You know, we've got 4 240 Bravos and for a total of however many, 2, 4, 6, 8, if you just got a gunner and AG. So for 8 soldiers of the platoon, all coming from first squad or the field maintenance section going to the range. So you got to do a little bit of math to figure that out. All right, next, for the sustaining, you guys are going to have to basically show how you're going to train up to your platoon FTX. Next. All right, squad ex-eval schedule. Squad ex-evals will be conducted during the platoon STX, during the FTX on a rotational basis. Ex-eval for company collective tasks are coordinated by the company XO. That's important. I won't tell you why. We'll just see if you actually read the documents so you can make 2 + 2 = 4 instead of 2 + 2 = 3. All right, next. In addition to the tasks that will be specified in the next document we go over, the first sergeant says that you have to include those tasks listed below and show how you're going to train on those as well. So you've got some additional tasks you have to incorporate in your training plan. All right, coordinating instructions. So you have to do a training brief. Obviously, you're going to be briefing. Next, that brief has to communicate your plan for the platoon FTX. We're focusing a lot on the FTX, but we're also going to focus on the train up for the FTX. Crawl, walk, run, 8-step training model, troop leading procedures, a proper timeline in accordance with the T-weeks like we discussed, and a deliberate risk assessment covering the training event. Not every training event, so you're not going to submit, 40 draw worksheets for every Thursday. You're just going to submit one for the platoon FTX. All right, and then those do-outs that we discussed earlier, and we'll go over again on the rubric. All right, and then logistics. On receipt of this order, platoons conduct their mission analysis, identify initial requirements for training resources, and include all classes of supply. I don't even think you've gotten a class on the classes of supply, but if you don't have it memorized by now, you should. All right, and then pretty much any requests for support are supposed to be submitted external resources. Obviously, you're not going to ask permission to use the stuff that's organic to your platoon. But anything that you don't have inside your platoon that you would be requesting from another unit, not from, say, TASC, the Training Aid Support Center, you would need to request to the company XO no later than T+6. That means that if you're using the 8-step training model and briefing off the T-week concept, when you're briefing your T+6 preparation 6 weeks out from the platoon FTX, you would have a list of all external resources that you would need. All right, so that's the op order. Leaves much to the imagination. Questions on the op order, or Frago, whatever you want to call it. All right, here we have the actual who is assigned with who. Just zoom in. All right, so there's your UICs of assignment as well as your platoon that you were assigned. That way it's all in one place. If it says that you're going to work with a sister platoon, that means that when you come up to brief, both groups are going to be briefing simultaneously. So we'll say Ordnance Group 1 and 2, you guys are going to be briefing at the same time with one projector and computer per pulled up, and it'll go something along the lines of, all right, week 1, month 1, maintenance platoon, what are you doing? You brief, cool. Week 1, month 1, distro platoon, what are you doing? Cool. Month 1, week 2, and basically you guys just brief what you're doing. Now, like I said, you guys will kind of have to work together, and it's up to you on how much you actually synchronize. But, I mean, obviously, if you're in the same company, you're not going to be reserving 2 different training areas to run 2 different weapons ranges or 2 different platoon FTXs. It's just a huge waste of resources and time. So it's kind of up to you how much you work together, but I encourage you to work together at least to synchronize kind of some of your resources and plans for large events like ranges and FTXs. That way it looks like more of a team effort, and it'll show that you guys have the ability to process information beyond yourselves. All right, so question on group assignments as far as units, UICs, and that stuff. All right, so once again, don't judge the long range and short range training calendars. I did not create them. I refined them a little bit for this. So, short range training calendar, active duty. There it is. As you notice, those are all company level tasks. Except for the squad, obviously. Short range training calendar for National Guard. Same thing, you're just given months so you can plan your drill weekends. Long range training calendar, basically both the same. Hey, turn that down. Yeah. Your face. Come over there, tickle you. All right, so obviously same thing. So I did add some CTC rotations at the end of this, basically to kind of make it a little more realistic. So you're training up, you're doing a crawl, walk, run. So these short range training calendars have you at the team or squad level, and then there's a company range. So obviously everybody in the company is going to be going to that range and qualifying, and then your platoon FTX and then a company FTX. So crawl, walk, run, squad, company range, platoon FTX, company FTX. Then eventually some section and team live fire exercises, and then a company live fire exercise, and then a combat training center rotation, which would be an MRX, mission rehearsal exercise, to prepare you and certify you for your deployment/vacation to some sunny far off land. All right. Now, if any of you comes up with issues as far as the training objective tasks and actual task numbers, please come up on the net and let me know. Like I said, I didn't create these calendars, so if the tasks that are on them don't necessarily make sense for the platoon tasks, come up, we'll have a conversation about it, and we'll figure it out. They should just be generic tasks. I spot checked them, but if anything crazy is sticking out, let me know, and we'll figure it out. Questions on the short range and long range training calendar? Okay, so this is kind of a weird training guidance blob that I typed up. So if there's something wrong with this, it actually is my fault. Okay, so develop a training strategy for the company level tasks at the company FTX. So obviously you're training up to the company FTX, so when the company goes and does its thing, you all don't look like a bunch of fools. Now, the strategy is going to use crawl, walk, run methodology. There's a million ways to skin that cat. You figure it out. You know, if you want to do crawl one Thursday, walk one Thursday, run one Thursday, whatever, man, absolutely. If you want to pick 3 or 4 tasks and do crawl in the morning, walk in the afternoon, and by the time, you know, COB hits, you're running with those tasks, whatever. As long as you can logically and realistically portray a training tasks in a crawl, walk, run method, cool. Now, active duty. You guys are training every Thursday, with the last Thursday of the month being a low training day. That way we're keeping it a little realistic. One thing we did not talk about is PT. So on the active duty side of the house, and this applies only to the active duty groups, PT is going to be combat oriented. So your PT has to be integrated with your sergeant's time training and the tasks that you're training towards. There's a couple different ways to get after that. You know, we had to do a combat stress shoot. So we threw on our rucks, 50-pound rucks with our weapons. We rucked 12 miles out to the range, did a bunch of jumping jacks and push-ups and sprints, fired our weapons, and then the people that were on profile and couldn't ruck march drove LMTVs and all the range gear out and called the range hot for us. And then once we all got done shooting, we jumped in the LMTVs and drove back. Or we had a sergeant major whose policy was on Thursdays for training, you had to go out in the woods during PT and not come back till the sun went down. By the way, the sun goes down really late on the West Coast in the summer. So 5 a.m., weapons draw, MRE draw, throw our rucks on, ruck to whatever the training area was. From there, the people that were on profile had all the training aids and everything we needed. They drove out there in LMTVs and Humvees. We set up. We trained all day, ate our MREs on the run, and then we rucked back. Or, you know, if you're doing medevac related tasks, you can run with stretchers and ammo cans and water cans and dummies. Anyways, you have to have a combat oriented PT plan that's going to fit into your sergeant's time training for those Thursdays. National Guard, well, let's just call it like it is and treat it like a drill weekend. The tasks that are on them don't necessarily make sense for the platoon tasks. Come up, we'll have a conversation about it, and we'll figure it out. They should just be generic tasks. I spot checked them, but if anything crazy is sticking out, let me know, and we'll figure it out. Questions on the short range and long range training calendar? Okay, so this is kind of a weird training guidance blob that I typed up. So if there's something wrong with this, it actually is my fault. Okay, so develop a training strategy for the company level tasks at the company FTX. So obviously you're training up to the company FTX, so when the company goes and does its thing, you all don't look like a bunch of fools. Now, the strategy is going to use crawl, walk, run methodology. There's a million ways to skin that cat. You figure it out. You know, If you want to do crawl one Thursday, walk one Thursday, run one Thursday, whatever, man, absolutely. If you want to pick 3 or 4 tasks and do crawl in the morning, walk in the afternoon, and by the time, COB hits, you're running with those tasks, whatever. As long as you can logically and realistically portray a training plan with the tasks in a crawl, walk, run method, cool. Now, active duty. You guys are training every Thursday, with the last Thursday of the month being a low density MOS training day. That way, we're keeping it a little realistic. One thing we did not talk about is PT. So on the active duty side of the house, and this applies only to the active duty groups, PT is going to be combat oriented. So your PT has to be integrated with your sergeant's time training and the tasks that you're training towards. There's a couple different ways to get after that. We had to do a combat stress shoot. So we threw on our rucks, 50-pound rucks with our weapons. We rucked 12 miles out to the range, did a bunch of jumping jacks and push-ups and sprints, fired our weapons, and then the people that were on profile and couldn't ruck march drove LMTVs and all the range gear out and called the range hot for us. And then once we all got done shooting, we jumped in the LMTVs and drove back. Or we had a sergeant major whose policy was that on Thursdays for training, you had to go out in the woods during PT and not come back till the sun went down. By the way, the sun goes down really late on the West Coast in the summer. So 5 a.m., weapons draw, MRE draw, throw our rucks on, ruck to whatever the training area was. From there, the people that were on profile had all the training aids and everything we needed. They drove out there in LMTVs and Humvees. We set up, we trained all day, ate our MREs on the run, and then we rucked back. Or, if you're doing medevac related tasks, you can run with stretchers and ammo cans and water cans and dummies. Anyways, you have to have a combat-oriented PT plan that's going to fit into your sergeant's time training for those Thursdays. National Guard, well, let's just call it like it is and treat it like a drill weekend. But you have to utilize PT time, and it has to be geared towards your training. All right, so National Guard for your training days are going to be typical drill weekends and a summer AT. I've given you also, you're allowed to plug into the calendar 2 4-day drill weekends that will be authorized, and those are either going to be for one of your key leader admin preparation days. If you have some big event coming up and they pull in all the key leaders to make sure everything's prepared and good, you can use them for ranges or any other mission essential training events that you deem. But you get 2 4-day drills in your 12-month period to accomplish your mission. National Guard, your low density MOS training days, you're going to have one Saturday every 4 months as a low density day, and then one day during AT. All right. Now, the mission essential task. So at your company FTX, which you're not planning for, you're training up for. Those are the 2 tasks that your companies are going to be trying to become proficient in at your FTX. That's it. So that is the goal. So your training should be somewhat geared or in relation to those tasks. And then Dresser, I saw you raise your hand. What's up?
Yes, sir. For National Guard, do we need to plan for PT during AT and then an ACFT every 6 months as far as diagnostic and record?
Correct. That's not just for National Guard. That's also for active duty because, those are mandatory training tasks. That's something easy for you guys to put on a calendar. Doesn't require a thought. Do you need to give me a a detailed PT plan, no, we're not going to get too in the depth on the weeds on that. As long as it's not during like a combat training day, you can just put PT. And then ACFT, you don't need to come up with some crazy ACFT plan. You can just put, we're going to do an ACFT this day. All right, so not really in the weeds on that. Just put it on the calendar and be aware of it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Active duty, I'm just looking for your combat PT. That way it correlates with your sergeant's time training. All right, so those company level tasks, those are all in every company's medal. They're all good company level tasks, but you're in platoons, so you don't worry about company level tasks. The company level task is an accumulation of everyone in the company. But your train up should be geared towards those tasks. Now, this is where I made it easy for you. I've kind of dumbed it down. So rather than having to dig through the company level tasks and find tasks that apply to your platoon or apply to what you want to train on or anything like that, I've just gone through and picked the platoon level tasks for you. So that's those. If it says maintenance and distro, that means you both have to train up to and perform those tasks. And then if it just specifies maintenance or distro, then only your platoon is training on that task. So I've broken it down by UIC and selected a bunch of platoon tasks for you guys to show what you're training on and how you're training up. So specified individual tasks to train on. So you got those individual tasks in the Frago that are from the first sergeant. Any other individual tasks that you choose to train on, that is up to you. Obviously, those platoon level tasks are going to be made up of individual tasks. I am giving you freedom of movement as a leader to pull the TE and Os for those tasks. So you can look and identify what individual tasks that you think, okay, we need to train on these individual tasks. They're core competencies. They matter to the platoon task. This is a no-fail. We have to figure it out. If we don't do it properly, somebody could die in a live fire exercise. Or, okay, that task is to perform maintenance on a wheeled vehicle. We're a maintenance platoon. We do that every day. We can chalk that one up as a win. So I'm giving you that freedom of movement and that interpretation. Hopefully common sense prevails. If I've learned anything from the past and bullet classes, it probably won't. But I'm going to keep it positive. All right. Specified squad and team tasks to train on. I'm also giving you that freedom of movement. Now there's an implied task in here. You have a squad level training exercise that you have to write CONOP for, correct? Correct. So that means that you have to dig into that medal and find those squad level tasks for your squad training exercise and for your squad to be exevaled on. Now, whether they're in those platoon tasks or they're subsets of those platoon tasks, you're going to have to dig in and figure that out. We've given you a lot of time, so use the time. But specified squad and team level tasks are up to you to choose. So basically, the FTX is the championship. The STX is kind of like the playoffs, the final playoffs. And then every training event beforehand is your preparation for that. So you're getting prepped, crawl, walk, run, little pieces of the puzzle you're training on until eventually the whole puzzle comes together and bam, you're this beautiful picture of a fully trained, ready to kill platoon. Fredericks, what is your question?
Yes, sir. So I just want to clarify that we find the platoon level tasks, the ones that you specifically laid out, in the company medal. And then from there, we find the squad level tasks. I guess I'm just confused on where we find the information.
Watch the recording of the day I went over cats. There you'll find your answer. All right, then moving on. Low density MOS tasks to be trained on. So here's how you're going to find this one. I glossed over it, so here's what's going to happen. For those low density MOS training days, you're going to pick 2 tasks. One skill level 1, one skill level 3. Per low density MOS training day per month. In the following MOSs. So if you're a maintenance platoon, you have to pick one skill level 1 task and one skill level 3 for 91 Bravo, 92 Alpha, and 91 Delta. If you're distro platoon, you have to pick the same style, either skill level 1 or skill level 3. Two tasks per MOS for 88 Mike, 92 Fox, and 89 Bravo. You'll find those in the Army Publishing Directorate under the Soldier Technical Publications, and each manual specifies which MOS they cover. Am I asking you to understand these? No. Am I asking you to show a little bit of thought when you identify them? Yes. So they shouldn't just be randomly chosen. You should kind of look at the skills and go, hey, this one looks like a good one to have a staff sergeant train a bunch of privates on to make sure somebody doesn't die in the motor pool. Like proper inflation of a tire and use of a tire cage. We used to have to do that one all the time because tires would explode and maim people because we were doing it wrong. Or, so don't randomly pick them, but you're not in the MOS proficiency and you haven't seen those MOSs at work in theory just yet. So I'm not asking you to understand them. I'm just asking you to have a logic or a justification as to why you chose them. Because that's going to open a conversation. Those are going to be on the calendar and I'm going to go, why are you training on those? And then you'll give me your justification. Real life, you're a platoon leader, I'm a company commander. I'm going to go, why'd you choose those to train on for that day? And you're going to look at your platoon sergeant's going to look at you and one of you is going to answer. And then I'm going to either go, okay, good, that makes sense. Or I'm going to go, that doesn't make sense. What I'm truly concerned about is motor pool safety. I want you to go back and relook those. We just had a 91 Delta electrocute themselves the other day, changing out the K2 relay on a 10K. Get your 91 Delta staff sergeant that's in charge of the GSE section to dig in that manual and find tasks that are going to cover safety when dealing with electrical wiring and components. So that's how it would go kind of real life versus we're all locked in a classroom. So questions on that? Nothing? Nothing yet? Okay. Okay, so this is the presentation that I already went over with you. We're going to skip to the deliverables. So you're going to develop a training strategy to train up for your platoon FTX. I beat that one in the ground. You're going to explain. So you're going to select individual and collective tasks from the unit task list that support the commander's training objectives and proficiency levels. So the only individual tasks that have been specified to you are the ones in the op order. For the collective tasks, those are going to be the platoon tasks that I've also appointed to you. For the squad tasks and the individual tasks that you have to train on to support those platoon tasks, that's going to be up to you. You're picking those. That's your freedom of movement. Check the TE and O's and then the UTL based on what I taught you. So from there, demonstrate your understanding of platoon planning, platoon training using the T-week concept in FM70. So if you don't understand the T-week thing, check FM70. On top of that, look at the 8-step training model and the troop leading procedures, because that's going to give you the answer. But essentially, it's where I glossed over kind of what you're expected to brief by T-week. Then apply the deliberate risk management process. So you're going to have to do a draw. I don't care if you use the online wizard tool. It used to be Gratz. I think it's JRATS or something now, but whatever the website is, I don't care if you use that. But that is not an all-encompassing product that it gives you. That is a baseline. So if you just use that tool and don't use any brain power or come up with any tasks or any information that's going to trailer that to your FTX, you're going to have a bad time. On top of that, I may pick one of those tasks out and go, this doesn't make sense. How did you mitigate this risk and come up with, go from a high to a low instead of a high to a moderate? And if you can't logically talk me through the risk criterion matrix with how you mitigated, in severity on the axis, using logic and, sound judgment, we're going to have a bad time. All right, deliverables. Your unit training plan. That's going to be the PowerPoint brief. The brief itself, obviously, everything you put on the slides is not going to be everything. You want to say. That's why you write scripts for briefs. That's why you have note cards for briefs. That's why everybody has roles and pieces of the pie. So yes, there is a difference between creating slides for your training plan and then actually being able to communicate that. The CATS exum for your unit, the CATS report for your unit, the TADS report for your unit, the training event matrix. And remember, you got to highlight the specific events from that training event matrix. And then the draw. If you're unsure of the phase you're in, it's been told to you. When I say phase, I mean plan versus ready on that training event matrix. That is specified in some of the documents that have been given to you. So this is what that calendar looks like. It's just a calendar, not a lot. So it is color coded. One thing that is an implied task is that you take those events from the long range and short range training calendar and you plot them on this calendar. If you have other implied events that you may know about, you can put those on there as well. make it look pretty. For example, if you know that active duty does motor pool Monday, every Monday, you can put that on there as a battalion level event. If you see that you have an MRX and you're going to Fort Irwin for your battalion deployment mission rehearsal exercise, you should probably put that on the calendar as a battalion level event. If you have a company range specified, you should put that on the calendar. If you have any platoon events that you're planning, also need to be on the calendar. Now, on top of that, if there's something that you plan and it needs to be on here. So active duty, every single Thursday, you're going to have platoon sergeant's time training, and then the tasks you're training on. And then same thing with Guard and Reserve for your drills. All right, and then your squad level LTX, your squad lane training exercises. So this is the one that freedom of movement on. So this is a squad level event. So you need to pick squad tasks from your unit task list that you're going to train on, as well as some individual tasks. But those tasks need to be basically a stepping stone that's going to escalate to and correlate to a platoon STX. So squad LTX is basically the pregame for the platoon STX. So the squad level tasks that you choose, or individual tasks, as long as they're appropriate and they correlate and it's showing that you're advancing in a crawl, walk, run, and basically prepping at the squad level to make the jump to the platoon level, we're good. Make sure you're filling all of this in. So you need to find a location for a grid coordinate. You need to plot a map. You need to have your lanes identified on the map. You need to have the task numbers. It has what you're currently rated at. I haven't specified that. As far as what your tasks are, we're going to go ahead and assume that I'm a crappy commander and I want to gauge where everyone's at as far as their tasks, or let's just say that objective T is impossible and the previous commander was unable to actually get any of this done. So every task that you're training on, we're just going to assume that you're in a U. All right, we good on that? Check Raj. Hua, Lima Charlie, Charlie Mike, BRB, AGR, FBI, CIA. Cool. All right. From there, make sure you fill in these things. What is the concept of your training? What is the end state of your training? You're gonna have to come up with an end state. Well, the end state is probably that by the time the STX is over, all squads are a P minus or a P or a T minus or a T. I wouldn't jump too high up the scale. Let's be realistic. If you're a U, that means you're probably gonna go to a T minus, maybe a T. And then hopefully that's prepared you for the platoon STX, and then you can gauge it from there. But number of leaders that are gonna be present, number of soldiers that are gonna be present. Your training methodology, don't put crawl, walk, run in there. I'll throw something at you in the briefing. Hopefully it's not hot coffee. Your planning timeline. So those are going to be your hit times. So pre-LTX, that's where you're going to convey the T week for this specific event. So you need to put hard dates and times, and maybe like whatever the T week is in parentheses. So T+8 training identified, T+7 request sent for training area and ammo dodix. Identify all internal, external resources. T+6, all external resources requests submitted to the company XO in accordance with the Frago that you received. T+5, all external resources confirmed and locked in. So make sure that you put in a detailed planning timeline. The execution timeline is for how you're actually executing the LTX. So that's going to be your timeline for the actual training event. You'll notice in parentheses, it says post LTX. So let me ask you this. What happens when you go to a range and you fire your weapons? What do you do when you come back? You clean your weapon. How long does it take you to clean your weapons and get them all put away for however big the range was?
Depends on how dirty they are, sir.
You're damn right. Anybody know what that is actually called in general when talking about Army training?
Is it maintenance?
Bigger picture, it's going to be a recovery plan. So when you're doing this planning, the reason it says post LTX is because you have to come up with a recovery plan. All right, so the LTX, you can have lane 1 start, lane 2 start, lane 3 start, 1000 hours, rotate, lane 1 goes to lane 2, lane 2 goes to lane 3, whatever. Break for chow. timeline. But you're also going to have your convoy back to wherever you came from, closing out the range, submitting a gold dust green report, meaning you've got accountability of all personnel and all sensitive items. Who's seen the U.S. Army What the Fuck Moments post where they're like, an experimental MRE went missing and the whole base is locked down? Anybody?
Experimental MRE, sir?
Yeah, the Facebook page uses it as code. That means that a unit lost a sensitive item and they locked the whole unit down. I can tell you that 2-2 Striker Brigade was locked down and not allowed to go anywhere for 3 days because the soldier had his wife bring him lunch out in the field back when your CST, formerly known as LDAC, was going on, and 2-2 was running the OP4. His wife brought him chow out in the training area where he was pretending to murk ROTC cadets all day, every day in a sweet LARP exercise that you know is CST. Homeboy accidentally put his weapon in the trunk of his wife's car. She went home. The whole brigade got locked down for 3 days because they were looking for a lost M4 until she finally opened the trunk and realized it was there, and it got turned in, and everybody was allowed to come back from the field and also go home. So that's the purpose for submitting gold dust green. So you can incorporate things like that into your timeline. You know, all weapons, sensitive items, and personnel accounted for, sent to S3 and staff duty at this time, and it can be at or around. It's never an exact time. And then you have to incorporate an appropriate recovery timeline. So if you took vehicles to your training event, guess what? You have to take those vehicles to the wash racks and wash them off, and then you have to take them to the fuel point and top them off on fuel before you can park them back in the motor pool. If you took weapons and you fired blanks or did a live fire, guess what? You have to get accountability of those weapons, clean them, and turn them back into the armory. If you took tents out, you're going to have to take those tents to the wash rack, wash the tents, and then take them to the motor pool and hang them from the engine hoists in the motor pool over the weekend while they dry. And then guess what you're doing motor pool Monday when you get done PMCS in your vehicles? You're folding those tents up and putting them back in the Connex, if they're dry by then, but nobody likes to sleep in a... Hey, don't yell. Willow's in school. Leave her alone. You want a snack? Nope. Anyways, you got to put your tent. Yeah, in a minute, honey. You got to put your tents away. Other things. I mean, if you checked out radios because you were running a CPX and you had a talk, you have to get accountability of those radios, and then whoever your commo person is for your company has to put those radios back in the radio cage. So you need to come up with a recovery timeline and incorporate that recovery into your post-event plan. I'm not saying you have to get super duper detailed because realistically, you're second lieutenants. You've never been to a unit. You don't know how long any of this stuff takes. You're not sure 100% of everything that has to happen because unless you actually have eyes on and you're doing it, there's going to be things you're going to miss. So I'll tell you, do the best you can, you know, be as realistic as you can, you know, and then don't put it all 100% on the con op because then it's not, your con op's going to be giant and it's not going to fit on the con op. So you may have to have some note cards available to brief so you can brief in detail if need be. Does that all make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, over to the right, reinforced individual tasks. So any individual tasks that you're going to be training on should be put here. Now, if there's a whole ton of them and it's just you're not going to have room, just put the most important ones and then take like the secondary ones and put them on a note card so you have them for reference. Reinforced collective tasks, same thing. If you are training towards a collective task, so your platoon tasks are obviously not going to be an SCT, a supporting collective task, and they're obviously not going to be a MET. They're within those things. You know, I just tried to make it a little more lieutenant appropriate and give you the platoon tasks rather than give you a freaking company level MET and say, figure it out, guy. So if you're training towards a specific collective task or you're reinforcing an SCT or a MET in here, list those. That way we have an idea of what you're training up to or what you're training towards. The trained performance measure, those are going to come from the TE&Os. The leader performance measure, also going to come from the TE&Os. Now, I realize they're not all going to fit. Pick the most critical, important ones. And if you're doing a leader performance measure, you don't have to put all the sub-steps for those tasks, just put like the task itself. LTX key personnel, exercise director, just make it up. Senior OCTs. So an OCT is an observer, coacher, trainer. That is someone who is supposed to observe you, coach you, and train you, and they're the ones that will issue you your grade or your rating based on how you perform at the end of what the event is. For an STX or a platoon FTX, that's just going to either be someone within the organization, which doesn't make it an ex-eval, or someone outside the organization, which makes it an ex-eval. If you go to one of those combat training centers, like Fort Irwin, Fort Polk, Camp Atterbury, they're dedicated cadre, and their only job is to follow whatever person is similar rank to them in their MOS and evaluate them based on the tasks that they're performing with those TE&Os and give them a grade or evaluation on it in the TPU. So that's who those personnel are. So a squad lane training exercise, you're going to need to pick an appropriate rank and for this. So what do you think an appropriate rank would be for a senior evaluator of a squad level exercise?
Hey, on Staff Sergeant E6 type, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Beg to differ, but then I've also been in the real army where like I've seen E5s as platoon sergeants because there just was nobody there. Or I've seen, E5s or E4 promotables being FMT chiefs, which is a sergeant first class position, but there were no sergeant first classes because it's really hard to get promoted in the maintenance field. So, hey, Captain Jarson, are you like listening and know how to hit your unmute button?
I'm here.
At Polk, who did you guys have evaluate the squad leaders? Should be a sergeant first class, right?
Yes, it was sergeant first class.
So correct answer by CTC standards, sergeant first class. If it's a squad LTX, kind of doing it the good old boy system, it would be the platoon sergeant evaluating the squad leaders. It not being the good old boy system and trying to do the right thing, it would be either a sergeant first class or a master sergeant from the S3, depending on what your S3 shop has. All my S3 shops were loaded because they either put the NCOs that were not allowed to be around soldiers due to bad stuff, or people that got in trouble, or people under investigation, or people that weren't allowed to be in charge of soldiers because they were incompetent, so they stuck them in a staff position where they couldn't screw anything up. Someone from the S3 shop in that appropriate down and doing the evaluations. So for that, just put sergeant first class, Jim Bob. Pick a name. Other OCTs, you can also put sergeant first class, Jim Bob. Pick a name. Op4 leader. What's important about this is you need to tell me where your Op4 is coming from, and just if you have Op4 embedded into your lanes and how they're performing it, kind of have an Op4 plan. Obviously, you have some guidelines kind of given to you in those TE and Os. Am I expecting you to give me a full tactics brief on what your Op4 is doing? No. But you should have a general idea as to what you want your Op4 to do. From there, you just kind of turn them loose and they get to go have fun LARPing in the woods. There's a lot of ways to skin the Op4 cat. You're in an FSC. You're in a squad LTX. What are the cooks doing? Well, the cooks could possibly be doing nothing. So you're going to get the Op4 from the cooks in the field feeding section. Or you got 5 squads in your round robin rotation of your squad training lanes. Fifth squad's going to be Op4, and then it's going to rotate by squad who's in Op4. But that's kind of a huge pain in the neck because then Op4 is constantly changing out. It's, in my opinion, better to have a dedicated Op4 element. You could come up, there's a million different ways to come up with how you want your Op4. So you just come up with a plan, be able to tell what they're doing, or what your plan is for them, and how they're going to be incorporated into your training. Train as you fight off the OE for that. The LCX resource manager, I don't know why it says resource manager, that would be who you task out that's going to manage external resources. The way it's worded, it sounds like a civilian, but it's not. Like it would be your third squad leader. Who is, you've specified in your Warno in the task to subordinate units that's getting all the stuff that you need, all the training aids. So just identify some people. They have to be the same people you specify in your Warno for who's getting the stuff for this training event. More than likely a supply sergeant or a high-speed squad leader. And then unit leaders, you need to identify the unit leaders that are going to be in the training. Why do you need to identify the unit leaders? That way you know what unit leaders are present for the TE&O checklists. That way you know what proficiency rate you're going to get and who's going to be managing what personnel and where. Should somewhat correlate to your execution timeline. You can just put first squad leader, staff sergeant, first squad leader, staff sergeant, second squad leader, whatever, pick a name. Questions on the squad LTX? No, cool. All right, platoon STX. It is literally the exact same CONOP and format. Shouldn't be a lot different. One of the things I did not cover is the internal resources required. So OE variables based off your TE&Os and how you want your dynamic training to be, whether it's static or hybrid or whatever. Off the objective T criteria matrix that's in the TE&O, that's how you're going to pick how many OE variables you're using. From there, the OE variables you are using, specifically, you're going to get from the Annex B, the intelligence document provided to you. So that's how you're going to get that information. Now, am I going to tell you what to pick? No, train as you fight as you train. It's your training. You figure it out. It's your baby. You get to groom it how you want it to grow up. Whether I like it or not, totally different story. Now, internal resources needed. That is where you're going to print off your platoon lines or paragraph and line numbers from your MTO. So you know how many soldiers you have, how many weapons you have, how many bayonets you have, how many trucks you have. So you have a list of your internal resources. From there, plug the mission essential ones in. I don't want you to put everything in your platoon on a PowerPoint. I want you to put what you're going to be using in this training exercise in there. So if you need 2 LMTVs for troop transport, there you go. If you need one high back Humvee for medevac, put it on there. So that's internal resources. Now it's not specified on this slide. If you're asleep, wake up. If you're eating a snack, wake up. If you walk to the bathroom in your hotel room, come back. I'm assuming you all woke up. Okay. You also need to put major external resources needed on here. So you identify, so chow plan. What's your chow plan for the platoon STX? Mike. Okay, that's pretty easy to figure out how many MREs you need. If you plan on using blank ammunition, you don't have blank ammunition in your platoon, so you have to request that as an external resource. If you're trying to get a medic to come to the training, that's an external resource that has to be requested through HHB. So anything you don't have in your platoon that you think you're going to need, you can identify. You need to identify and put on this slide as an external resource. Now, things like you can order from supply, like chem lights, 550 cord, basic throwaway items. Just write that on a note card so you can brief it as need be. If you need compass, put that on there. Compasses are always a huge friction point. Either your unit has them or they don't. Half the time they can't find them. Because they're locked away in the arms room for inventories. They're afraid you're going to lose them out in the woods, so they don't let you use them. So you need to identify those external resources and put them on these slides. We already talked about the draw. Now I'm going to show you the other slide deck. So this is the old slide deck. This is we made this back in 2018 when Logistics Bulwark didn't exist. Not a lot different there. So this is what's called a metal crosswalk. This isn't important for you to brief specifically, and you're not going to brief it to me. I'm just talking about it so you kind of know what it is. So every time your commander goes to brief company training or at your training meeting, your company level training meeting, this will likely be a slide. It'll have the company medal, which is to the far left, and those are those MET tasks. And then it'll have the SCTs in that middle column. It'll have the current training, so what you're currently rated at, and then by the end of the quarter, what you project to be trained on. If you're doing this for a QTB, a quarterly training brief, it'll have this, and then you'll be briefing everything that your commander or you will be doing during that quarter. This product that you're giving us is more of a QTB, a quarterly training brief, rather than an actual training meeting, and I'll show you why in a minute. But this is a metal crosswalk. It's got the MET task, it's got the supported collective tasks, it's got the current rating, what projected rating is, and then highlighted individual tasks that are going to be trained. And you're supposed to illustrate what you're training on, where you're at, and where you're going to be all on this slide. So it illustrates kind of an overview of how you're going to accomplish being proficient in your medal. So this is an example of a monthly calendar. I like this one better because it shows the sister battalions in your brigade. So if you have trouble planning your platoon ranges, you have the ability to say you're going to tack on 5 soldiers to your sister battalion's range. So this is kind of an idea of what a monthly training calendar looks like. Not a bad example. This is why the brief you have now is more of a QTB than an actual training meeting brief. So if we were in a training meeting, you would only be briefing me as your commander about 8 weeks out. I made my platoon leaders brief 12 weeks out because training's important. So first we would start off with, the most distant month away. So 3 months out, hey, here's what we've got going on in July. Here's a highlight and an overview. In the XO speaking, the company XO will be running this training meeting for me. So hey, sir, here's what we've got going for the month of July. We'll get into the details. I'm training when platoon leaders brief their parts, but large scale events we've got going on. We've got a Donza on July 4th, which means we're going to have our POV inspections and passes and paperwork done by July 2nd and submitted to the battalion commander and battalion sergeant major. Other than that, battalion is putting on a driver's training event. It's going to last a week, and we have to provide 10 soldiers for that. So platoon leaders, platoon sergeants get prepared to provide 5 soldiers each for that driver's training, which is going on the week of the 16th to the 20th. All right, sir, now that we've hit the main ticket items, I'm going to turn it over to the maintenance platoon leader. Maintenance platoon leader is going to be briefing you on what training they have. Hi, sir. Nice to meet you. My name is Second Lieutenant Lasky. Here's what we have going on at T+12. So our sergeant's time training, this is what we have going on during the week. I'll talk to you about the most important piece, our sergeant's time training, which is going on Thursday, July 5th. So this is our T+12. To the left, you see the tasks that we're going to be training on and focusing on. Then in the middle, you have our events. So what's going to happen, sir, is here's our timeline, 0500. We're going to meet the arms room. We're going to draw weapons and blank firing adapters. And everybody's going to be issued 240 rounds of blank ammunition, or they're going to be issued their combat loads of blank ammunition for their assigned weapons. From there, we're going to go It's going to be a 4-mile rep march till we get to the training area. We're going to have the training area set up. By the time we get there, all the personnel in the platoon that are on profile are going to be doing that. From there, it's going to take us roughly an hour to get everybody set up and in their lanes. Lane 1 is going to be this task, lane 2 is going to be that task, lane 3 is going to be that task, and that's my idea for the training. Cool. Sounds like you have a really good training event lined up. Make sure you get all your resources identified and locked in. Let me know if you need anything. Like I said, we're 12 weeks out. You got a lot of time to plan. The only thing I would encourage you to do is, since you're 12 weeks out, go ahead and put in the request for that training area and the ammunition to Land and Ammo. And if you need any help with that, let me know so I can go put a boot in the S3's ass to try to get it done. Come back and brief me next week on where those requests are at, and if I need to go up and pull some rank to get you what you need. Roger, sir. All right, I see your required resources, internal and external. They look good. Why do you need a medical team for this training? That's kind of a waste of the headquarters company's medics. We don't need a medic, sir. We just thought it would be good. Okay, well, thinking it would be good? No, screw that. You're not wasting the battalion's resources. You got CLS personnel, right? Right. All right. Hey, supply sergeant, who is also attending the meeting. Make sure the CLS bags are good to go. You can sign them out to the PL so they have CLS bags on site. So looking at your required internal resources, it looks like you've got an LHS, one Water Buffalo, and 1 Humvee. Since I just took your medic away from you, don't forget to get a Humvee for a medevac vehicle for those CLS bags in case somebody gets injured, okay? So add that to your slide for next week. Roger, sir. All right, moving on. Distro platoon leader. Let's talk about your T+12. That was very, very in-depth. More than likely at T+12, it would just be the tasks that you're going to train on and a general idea of a plan. But that's kind of the flow of how a training meeting goes. Now, you're not going to do all that because you're not going to have a slide for every single Thursday for every single month for 3 months or every drill weekend for a year. or else we're going to be there for 4 hours. So it's more of a quarterly training brief. So you're going to have this monthly calendar. You're going to show on that monthly calendar the tasks that you're training on. You're going to brief to me, meaning it's not going to be on a slide. You're going to say it with your mouths, how you're using the crawl, walk, run strategy. So you're going to have to illustrate that, with time, not necessarily a detailed timeline, but a general plan of crawl, walk, run with the tasks that you've chosen that's building up to your LTX and your FTX over the course of 3 months, or if you're National Guard Reserve, an entire year. So we're not going to get super duper deep down in the weeds on this, but you have to have a logical thought process. It has to be in detail. You have to identify the tasks you're training on and what you're doing. And then where you're going to give me that detail, that super duper level of detail, is going to be on those ConOps for your LTX and your FTX, because those are your culminating events. That's where you're having ex-evals done. External evaluators grade you for your performance. That is you proving to me that you are prepared to come to the company FTX and not get anybody killed and do good training and give good rating. So that is where you're going to spend all of that depth, all that detail. We're going to dig down in the weeds and talk about it. So those are the most important slides. But if you can't tell me how you get to, how you get to there based on the road path you're going to create, then it's going to be a bad time. You guys understand that?
Yes, sir.
So that's kind of the difference between an actual training meeting versus a QTB. And this is more of a QTB, not an actual training meeting. I would prefer it to be an actual training meeting because not a lot of junior lieutenants go to QTBs. So we're going to roll with it. So this isn't a bad thing to incorporate, but essentially you're briefing this on your slides. What we used to have to make you do is take the objective T criteria matrix up here and then circle the X's and talk through the criteria matrix on how you're going to get to that rating. So, I told you all that you're a U currently. And what you would do here is for the STX, you would tell me, you're going to be training dynamic or single threat based off the OE variables that you've identified based on what the TEOs tell you have to do. And then, you tell me if you're going to do day training or night and day training. And you basically walk me through your plan, ex-eval, yes or no. And then you basically walk me through your plan with this evaluation to show me on the actual grade card how you're going to get to that P- or that P or that T based off of it. If you choose to do this, sure, cool, whatever. If you don't choose to do this, just be able to brief it because your ConOp has all this information in it. You just need to make sure you put the information in and you illustrate it. Because guess what? At the end of the day, we're only going to care about, are you going to train? Yes. Are you going to train safely? Yes. Are you going to get the evaluation that we want? Yes. Are there any problems that you need help with? And that's a big one. So, think of this as a teaching moment. Every slide should have issues or problems or I need help with section on it when you're talking about training, because that gives you a talking point to the commander when you have the commander's attention, whether it be battalion or company. Because commanders spend about 90% of their time on the bad 10% of their soldiers because they're out getting DUIs, murdering their wives, robbing banks, going AWOL and showing up with fuck you on their salute hands. All kinds of great stuff that you're going to get to deal with. I'm very excited for you. That being said, you may not get a lot of face time with your commander if you ever get any. Depends. So you need to have that problems or issues or, I forget, we had some weird buzzword that we were required to put on your slide and identify those. Now, when you're identifying those, you need to look in the back of your head and think, okay, is this a problem that I need a commander's help with? Yes or no? To tell you frankly, one of my faults as a lieutenant was I used to always put everything I had problems with on my slide until finally a major pulled me aside and was like, come here. He's like, so why are you putting all this stuff on the slide? And I go, to show that I'm doing my job. He goes, exactly. We know you're doing your job. Here's the problem. The battalion commander is a fixer. What you're doing is you're putting your problems or your issues on the slide as a way to prove that you're doing your job in venting. The battalion commander doesn't see it like that. The battalion commander sees it as a problem that they need to intervene and get fixed. So unless it's a problem that you need a lieutenant colonel to step in and solve, you don't put it on that slide. You understand? I was like, oh, that makes a whole lot of sense. That's really good relationship advice too. Am I listening to you rant or am I listening to try to help you solve the problem? Cool. And then all of a sudden, the planets aligned and it made sense. So you should capture if you have any planning problems or issues, but they need to be at that appropriate command level. I use the example, you don't have the training area locked in. Well, that's a deal breaker for training. If you don't have a place to go train, that's a problem. That is where me as a company commander would go, okay, I'll go talk to Langdon Ammo in the Battalion S3. It may not be the training area that you asked for, but I will guarantee you'll get a training area after I come back. From there, it's up to you to use the 8-step training model to conduct a leader's recon and figure out how you're going to make that training area work. So that's the purpose of that whole I've got problems, I need help, you're my adultiest adult section on the slide. And that's basically a place for you to speak out and ask for help. Is it going to be practical in this exercise? Probably not, because it's all made up. But it's good food for thought for you to learn for in the future. So that covers kind of the old legacy PowerPoint. Do you have any questions on that?
Sir, this is Lieutenant Whalen.
Yes.
You said that you at the formation the other day, you said that you like the legacy PowerPoint, but there's positives in both. Do you want us to merge these two that you've shown us in certain ways?
I mean, at the end of the day, this is your product. What you're giving me is I want to be entirely your own. I prefer the battalion level, the calendar on the old product better than the new one because it shows you what right looks like. Whereas the old one or the new one, somebody just copied and pasted the image of a calendar in a PowerPoint slide. I like the objective T matrix because it physically shows what you're going to be graded on. and you're going to talk how you get to that P. But I like that better because it visualizes for me on the grade card. However, if you can do it in the ConOp, that's even better because the ConOp shows me how your operation and your mission and your training event is going to go. And if you can take the two and illustrate it, talk about it and actually brief it well, that's even better. That's kind of where I'm getting at with that. As for the middle crosswalk, I don't care about that. That's a commander's level thing, not a platoon leader's thing. You can toss that one in the trash. I just went over it so you kind of get the idea of how that's briefed for in the future, because you're going to have to brief similarly to that on a lower level. But if it looks good, it flows, and it makes sense, and you hit all the points on the rubric, you'll be right.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I'm going to pull up the rubric now and highlight some things where people screw up. As soon as my son stops turning the volume up on Baby Shark. All right. So for the rubric, one of the things that people screw up big time right here, incorporate events that reflect how the 8-step training model is incorporated leading up to the platoon FTX. That is 1 point per step. A lot of people forget to incorporate that 8-step training model. Where that would probably be in your planning timeline. All right, so that's a highlight of what people screw up on a lot. Correctly used as standalone, integrated, or mission-supported training, that's on your ConOps, whether you circle it or not. And you choose the right one is, whether you're just lazy and don't pull up FM70 and hit the Control F button and read what each one is, and then make an informed decision as an adult there. One big one that I'm on, Warno task down to the squad level for which squad is responsible for training, planning, resourcing, executing, and evaluating squad level training events. Warno task down to the squad level and breaks down which squads are responsible for subtasks associated with the platoon STX. Now, this says that you have to write a Warno and all this stuff has to be in the Warno. This is not like a Warno that you're used to writing. You're used to cadet land, on a freaking write in the rain notebook piece of paper, 5W Warno. That is not this. That is a mission Warno, for some made up exercise. This Warno is going to be more like an op order, and you should treat it like an op order and just call it a Warno. I say that because depending on how your chain of command is and with the 3 shop, the Warnos that they issue for events and taskings are going to be multiple pages, and they're going to basically be an op order. It's just called a Warno because they're giving you a heads up. And then they very rarely write actual op orders. Almost everything is a frago. Based off some referenced op order, and it's usually the first op order to come out for the year. So Real Army, we almost never write op orders. We just always write fragos or Warnos. However, they will read and be as detailed as an op order. So I know this says Warno, but it's not the type of Warno you're used to. So you need to get those old cadet land write in the rain notebook you're on an STX Warnos out of your heads, because they don't exist. They're not real. You've been plugged into the matrix to believe they're real. And get into the mindset of because it's asking you for a lot of information. I mean, it's asking you to task down to the subordinate level or the subordinate squad and tell what those squad leaders are doing. So you're going to have to say, first squad is responsible. For getting all internal resources together and dispatching vehicles and assigning drivers to those vehicles. Second squad is responsible for getting all training aids from Task C no later than T+4, and then plugging in a real date for your T+4. Whatever T+4 is, 4 weeks out from your STX or your FTX. So you're going to have to get a very in-depth level of detail for that Warno on how you're going to execute this mission. Make sure you're checking all these blocks and you're writing the Warno like it's an op order. For the operational environment variables right here, I recommend that you write 2. So don't copy and paste from the Frago you're given, because it's kind of crappy. You can use, obviously you're going to need to take the Annex B and then take the operational environment variables that you're going to implement into your training, however many of those you choose in accordance with Objective T and those TE and Os, and that's what you're going to put in your op order. Now, is your training actually taking place in Atropia of the Caucasus region, also known as Iran, Georgia, Jordan, Russia? No. So you need to have a separate statement that is actually real life, like the terrain of the training area is flat, dusty, has some old growth, and weather for the day is going to be a high of 59 and a low of 42, partly sunny. So you should have your situational AOAI. So your squad leaders, when they read this order, they know what the training is going to be geared towards, so they have an idea of what to plan for. But you also need to have a real life one, so they also know the weather and terrain that they're actually going to be stepping into, not the LARPing terrain. Does that make sense? Silence is acceptance.
Pardon me, sir.
Yep.
Would it be easier to write two different warnos, one for the actual training and then one for the admin side? Or should we incorporate the two into one then?
You want me to tell you the Kat Lasky answer or the Schoolhouse answer?
The Kat Lasky, sir.
I would do two. I would just have one that's very basic. You know, hey, we're going to be LARPing. This is what's going on. This is the enemy. This is the terrain, whatever. And then I would have a separate one that is your actual planning op order that says, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. This is my end state. This is the commander's end state. First squad leader, you're responsible for getting this, and this, no later than this date. Second squad leader, you're responsible for getting this, and this, no later than this date. That way you've got one for actual training event for LARPing, and then you've got one for actual planning and execution. I've seen people try to combine them in real world and Schoolhouse, and it just doesn't work because there's so much room for interpretation and confusion. And on top of that, you got to think about your poor freaking squad leaders and team leaders who could be E4s and E5s trying to read this and figure out what in the hell you're talking about. So it cuts out that issue. Speaking of which, when you're writing orders, you need to keep it at a 7th grade reading level. Cut out the college BS. You know, I don't know if you've had your writing class, but Army writing is different than college writing. You're not writing me a freaking essay here showing me all your beautiful, colorful language and words and how you know how to use a thesaurus. You're telling me how you're going to plan and execute a mission. It needs to be at a 7th grade reading level because that's what the majority of the Army is at. So know your audience, gear it towards your audience. I read it much higher than a 7th grade reading level in case you were concerned, but trying to train you for the real Army.
Thank you, sir.
I'm really glad you asked that because that shows me that you have common sense. Thank you. Vic, I'm sorry, Captain Darson, do you know, I think this is, yeah, this is Fort Pickett. All right, so the map that we provided you with for your LTX and your or FTX is right here, and it is Fort Pickett. Fort Pickett is about 45 minutes down the road in Blackstone, Virginia. It's a National Guard base. One of you is in 94th. So I know one of you's been there before, but this is the training area map we provided to you. You can use this as a map recon to figure out where you're going to be training. And basically, you know, I'm giving you dealer's choice here. Real life, you wouldn't get dealer's choice, but you can pick the training area that best suits your training. This is going to come to a talking point. Do you use this training area map or do you use a satellite map? Captain Jarson, which do you prefer?
Can you repeat that, Captain Lasky?
Do you prefer satellite maps or training area maps?
I prefer satellite.
Samesies. So training area maps are good if you're trying to do a convoy brief and show someone how to get there, you know, large picture. It's good for strip maps. It's good for directions. It's good for getting you in the general area. What it's not good for is showing the physical terrain and vegetation and waterways and Oacoca, or whatever, however they're teaching you the acronym now. It's not good for any of that. So please, you can use this map if you want, but it all looks great until I pull up a satellite image of it and your training is actually in the middle of a swamp when you're trying to plan a convoy. So I would encourage you to figure out the training area that you want to use and then pull it up on satellite and take satellite screenshots and use those for your con-ops. That way you're showing us the terrain, the vegetation, what it actually looks like. So you're familiarizing us with your training model at the location. All right, so I believe that's everything. Let me double check. Rubric guidance. Yep, that's everything. So that being said, what are your questions on this assignment as a whole?
Sorry, this is Lieutenant Doyle. I just had a question about what dates for active duty. I know in some of the documents it says we're doing Q3 21, and then the long range and short range calendars have mostly dates in the first quarter of the year.
So it sounds to me like it would be easier to just go with the first quarter and then change the actual dates on your calendar template.
Roger that.
Other questions?
Yes, sir. This is Lieutenant Dresser. For National Guard, we also need to include SRP in our drill schedule as well.
So that's a good question. I've seen it both ways. I've seen National Guard personnel come up with a manifest and convoy plan, and they plan to convoy from their home station of their assigned unit with their organic equipment all the way to Fort Pickett. I've seen them also plan UMO and plan, their railhead activities for shipping their equipment, and then them riding on buses in their timelines. And then I've seen a lot of craziness as far as that goes. That's not on the rubric. It shows good thought process. If you have experience with that and you can articulate it, yes. However, I'm not going to ask a brand new second lieutenant who's never been to a guard unit and has no idea what any of that means to give that to me because it's unfair. So I didn't really answer your question. If you want to, it looks good and it's cool and it shows that you know what you're talking about, but it's definitely not mandatory.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep.
If that's all the questions, I was gonna say this is Kemp Miller. I just wanted to touch base about the way forward. I want to give you guys about 30 minutes to just take a quick break so you guys can get in your groups because you just got all this information, and I want to make sure that you guys have time to kind of touch base really quickly so you guys can kind of come up with a way ahead while it's fresh in your mind. As soon as you're done with that, we'll hop back on and go ahead and start knocking out the rest of our classes for today. So of course, if you have any other questions, feel free to ask Captain Lasky before we get off. But if not, I will meet you back on at 11:40. 11:40, we're going to do a quick, it'll be about 30 minutes, quick little 30-minute session. If you have to pop out to make the bus, no worries there. Actually, let's start at 11:35 so you guys can do it. We'll start at 11:35 and we'll do a quick session. As soon as we're done with that, you guys can hop on the bus or pop over to the DPAC in your POVs, and then we'll be right back on when you guys are done. So other than that, I'll see you guys back on. Of course, keep asking any questions that you have. I'll see you back on in 30 minutes. We don't have to close out anything, but instruction will be back on in 30 minutes. So 11:35, we'll be back on to start the second part of the day, which will be PL scenarios.
I'll be here lurking if anybody wants to pick my brain in the next 30 minutes.
Roger, thank you, sir.
Hey, Captain Lasky?
Yep.
Hey, I just have a quick question. So just to confirm, active duty does the quarter, and then the Reserves National Guard is going to be doing years training with AT involved, correct?
That is correct.
Awesome, thanks, sir. And then just one other question too, and I have a feeling this is probably going to be no, but figured I'd ask anyways. Is there any way we could see an example of like a completed one that somebody's trained in the past, just so we can kind of have a visual to go off of?
I'm feeling generous. Oh, hey, Captain Stillmiller, Captain Jargon. Do you guys want them to do a memo?
I don't care about the memo as much unless you do because, this is sorry, because they're going to do the memorandum assignment with Mr. Wilcox. So
Then that's going to be a no. I'm not creating more work for anybody because it's not how, no, just going to keep it nice and say no.
sounds like plan to me.
All right, so warning, I have no idea if this is a good one or not. Had like a million bullet classes. It's the first one I found. Well, it looks like they went with an ALU templated format, which is a bold strategy. They put the agenda slide in. You're always supposed to do an agenda, so that was a good TTP. You never read the agenda though. That's a bad TTP. So I hate this calendar format. It's hideous, but looks like they put range weeks in. So they got a T14. They used a T- instead of a T+, but they did, 14 weeks out, request land, alpha roster, gear, Warno. Looks like they got start time training identified and requests identified for specific events, not necessarily at platoon or company level. And then they got their FTX. They got their platoon STX. So they used satellite imagery and highlighted it in and used Army doctrine symbols to show where their sustainment and their lanes were starting. So they did a good job of that. Let's see. They came up with a mission statement. It's got the who, it's got the what, it's got the where, it's got a when, it's got a grid coordinate, it's got the action, it's got the OE. In-state's a little generic, but it's got some detail. Soldiers and leaders, planning timeline, Warno, recon, reserve, requesters. It's not a terrible planning timeline. Not the best execution timeline. Could use a little more detail. I've seen better. At least I got the AAR plan in it. No recovery plan. Got tasks. Let's see what else we got. Got a feeding plan, a medical plan, a safety plan, OIC and NCOIC. Internal resources needed fuel. Let's see, we got fuel, water, actual numbers of water and MREs, actual vehicle numbers and MVG numbers, ammo. I mean, if they wanted to, they could get in the weeds with ammo. Clipboards, tables, chair. I mean, that's a pretty decent internal resource list. They don't have any external resources, but MREs, 92 cases of MREs, definitely external. Okay, 50 chairs. Yeah, I doubt their platoon has 50 chairs. We always had to get chairs from the MWR. Let's see. They got their measures from the TENOs, the tasks. So let's say this is mediocre. Oh, see, they didn't delete the notes here in the PowerPoint slide. They stole Mr. Wilcox's space presentation and used that format. That's why it looks weird. STX looks like they got a little bit more detailed on it, so it's not bad. I mean, overall, this one isn't good. It isn't bad. It's kind of in the middle. Let's go back. Let's find a different group. No, it looks like they made a trading calendar on Excel too. It must have been high speed. You can tell that this group had synchronization issues because they labeled it the PowerPoint, which means they probably had about 7 others. All right, looks like we got training brief where they really went down. There's a lot on that slide, but whatever. References, no, don't care about references. Also don't care about references. That's not an Army thing. Looks like they chose to do the metal crosswalk to show what they were training on. So, I mean, that's a method. If they were going to do that, they should have highlighted what they were training on this quarter. That way it identifies it instead of just one overall company task, unless they're training on everything. So they didn't highlight what level training is going on, which means you don't have situational awareness of battalion and company and range, which isn't good. Looks like they decided to do the in-depth T weeks, and they took my 12-week model and got crazy with it and pushed it out to 13 and 14 weeks like the last group. So we got tasks, we got events for the week, we got some resources identified. A little general on the resources, but 13 weeks out, what do you expect? A little bit more detailed on 12 weeks out, so that's not bad. Got a range. I remember this brief. They screwed something up. I remember big time. Some ranges. Oh, they did a con op for a range. Oh yeah. So you guys don't have to do this. I think they overthought it, but I mean, still all in all, not like a bad idea. They showed it's a requirement to show how you get to 90% based on your qualification. So they did do a con op for one of their ranges, which is cool. There's their crew serve ranges con op. So they only focused on platoon, which is correct, but you're given a short range and long range training calendar. Those events need to be highlighted. All right, they're STX. So they use satellite imagery. It looks like they're in a large footprint. They use doctrinal symbols. They plotted their OP4. Every map needs a north-facing arrow, so at least they did that. It's kind of an ugly north-facing arrow, but I'll give it to them. We got grid coordinates and locations. We have phases of the operation, which I really like. We have an in-state, and the in-state shows some thought, so that's good. I don't see a mission statement, so I don't like that, because if you don't know what your mission is, how are you going to execute it? Leaders, soldiers, type of training, planning timeline. Planning timeline's a little generic, but not bad. Execution timeline's very generic, which is bad. Because it's a con op, meaning you're supposed to get the concept of the operation, so it's supposed to illustrate how you're executing. A whole lot of individual tasks, the actual performance measure, the leader measures, OE variables, internal resources. So they put all the regulations as internal resources, which is the wrong answer. They should have put like actual internal resources from the platoon, and they also should have put external resources to show that they put some thought process in requesting things to support their training. Okay, but for some reason on the platoon level 1, they actually put real internal resources. Oh, and that's it. We just end. No ending slide. Okay, well, that's a way, not the way. Interesting. All right, I'll go back and see if we can find a better group. Let's try the other class. I think they were more high speed. Green was a smart kid. Oh, this is also a National Guard one, so we have to look at that. So we got an agenda slide, a weirdly formatted agenda slide, but whatever. That is a lot of yellow and is physically painful to look at. Don't do that. But we got basic soldier tasks. Looks like they were kind of lazy with that first Thursday, which I don't like. They actually identified the tasks for the other 3, which isn't bad. Once again, they've got ranges highlighted, but they don't actually say what's going on, which is not good. Looks like they also chose to do a range to show how they were going to get to 90%, which is good. That means they actually read the Frago and paid attention and developed a plan. That internal resources list right there is pretty impressive. Water buffalo, jugs, not entirely internal because they don't have medics. Real MRE count, real weapons count, real ammunition counts, cleaning kits. So it shows they put some thought into it. That's good. Okay, yeah, it's not bad. Not terrible. Someone's not very good with PowerPoint slides, but okay. They do have the T-week models labeled on the right side of the calendar, so it shows T-week concept. Not bad. It doesn't show the 8-step training model as far as allocating resources, so hopefully they covered that in their op order. So we got STX. Looks like they chose to go with the training area map, which I don't like because it doesn't tell you anything. And I can tell you that they're in the middle of a swamp, but that's it. And it looks like they're a distro platoon because they have 4 truck squads. So I don't know how you're going to do training with 4 truck squads in a swamp. But they have an SP, multiple objectives, LP, OPs, and ranges. So they have they got a very detailed execution plan that stops at the AAR, so no recovery plan. They have phases, which is good. All the tasks, which is good. They've got trained performance measures, which is good. So they've identified, kind of an evaluation criteria, which they just pulled directly from Objective T for weapons. So that's not bad. Pretty good list of resources. They mixed internal and external, but I mean, at least they did it. And the platoon STX. So they have the 10-step training model, which is even better, off to the right with an actual timeline. I do like that because that means they check the block to get it done. But they also showed some detail and like they actually read and cared. So that's not bad. And it does have retrain on there. So they have a to be determined for retraining and recovery timeline, kind of. So that works. Mission statement, Charlie Company, 2nd Squad, platoon STX lanes in vicinity of a grid for that reason. I'd say it's an above average mission statement, but it's not great. In-state, Charlie Company, 2nd Platoon is proficient in all listed tasks and successfully evaluated and trained on combat readiness. No, that's a good in-state. That covers it. Leaders, soldiers, training type, planning timeline with phases. All right, so this isn't bad. It's not. I'd say this is above average. STX. Wait, how do we go down? There we go. Oh, and they actually chose an ending slide. So that wasn't horrible. Ooh, Womack's group. Womack was a genius. This one should be pretty good. So is Murphy. Murphy's in Ranger School right now. He was a pretty smart kid too. This one should be good. So it looks like this group chose to put their presentation all in one for maintenance and distribution. So we must be outside of T14 or something. They have resources allocated at least. We have, looks like platoon stuff on the Thursday with actual timelines. And then to the right, we have, looks like they highlighted TLPs in the actual tasks. So it's got the right level of detail. It doesn't have the battalion or company events on it. It's like, all right, so they grouped it a hodgepodge. So they had 2 different standards, one for each platoon. They also misspelled litter. Well, at least they put what they're doing on the range day. That is a better slide. So you can tell the difference between the 2 groups pretty easily. Looks like they did a range slide too. That's pretty basic. That's lazy. This is not lazy. Let's see what we got here. We got a grid. Training, in-state, leaders, methodology. A basic planning timeline. Not really good. Yeah, that's all right. This looks cool. Yeah, they've got an occupation and movement plan, but there's a lot missing from this. That looks better. So that was okay. agenda. Looks like they decided to highlight the phases that they were on. Oh, for some reason they also gave every Thursday a month as an MWR day, which doesn't make any sense. Don't do that. Basic and lazy. Oh, this has lots of times on it. This looks decent. So we got multiple objectives, Army doctrine graphics, a basic planning timeline, an actual execution timeline broken down by day, tasks. Looks like for the personnel off in the bottom right, they chose to use the actual paragraph line numbers from the MTO, which is interesting. They also listed all the regulations for resources instead of actual resources, which is a waste of time. But they did write what they're doing in each lane. So good and bad things. Oh, looks like they made some changes. Maybe they presented to me earlier. And a detailed phase of the operation. All right, so that was okay. None of these have been great. Anybody have any questions?
What are you doing?
Okay, everyone, we're gonna go ahead. Hopefully you guys had the opportunity to go over your teams and you're prepared to just move forward with your unit training management. We're gonna switch gears to PL scenarios. And what we're gonna do today is just go through the process. We're really gonna switch gears. We're gonna kind of turn off our training management and go